There was a time when Suzuki built motorcycles that didn't just compete with the industry, they terrified it. Long before modern superbikes became overloaded with electronics, aerodynamic wings, and digital riding modes, there was the GS series, raw, mechanical, brutally honest. And now, after decades of silence, whispers inside the retro motorcycle world suggest Suzuki could finally be preparing something nobody expected to return: the GS1000C. Not as a museum piece, not as a cheap nostalgia project, but as a modern retro superbike designed for a new generation of riders who were tired of motorcycles feeling cold and artificial. And if Suzuki actually pulls this off in 2027, this could become one of the most important retro comebacks Japan has seen in years. Because unlike Honda and Yamaha, Suzuki has been strangely quiet in the retro war. Honda revived the CB philosophy. Kawasaki dominated with the ZSRS lineup. Even Yamaha found success blending heritage with modern engineering. But Suzuki?
For years, fans kept asking the same question: where is the real GS comeback? And honestly, they had a point. The original GS1000 wasn't just another motorcycle from the late 70s. It became one of Suzuki's defining machines, a bike that helped establish the company as a serious performance brand during the golden age of Japanese superbikes. It was powerful, aggressive, and surprisingly refined for its era. But perhaps more importantly, it had character. The kind of character modern motorcycles sometimes struggle to recreate. And that's exactly why the timing of this rumored return suddenly makes sense. Because the market is changing again. Riders are no longer obsessed with maximum horsepower alone. They want connection. They want analog emotion. They want motorcycles that feel alive. That's why retro machines are exploding globally. Not because riders want old technology, but because they miss motorcycles with identity. And Suzuki may finally understand that. If the GS1000C returns in 2027, most insiders believe Suzuki won't simply recreate the old bike panel for panel. That would never work in today's market. Instead, the smarter approach would be something far more dangerous: a neo-retro performance machine with classic GS proportions, modern engineering, and just enough vintage DNA to awaken older riders while attracting younger enthusiasts. And honestly, Suzuki already has the tools to make this happen. The company still possesses one of the strongest engineering foundations in Japan. The issue was never capability, it was direction. For years, Suzuki focused heavily on practicality and value, while rivals invested emotionally in heritage and storytelling. But recently, something feels different. The motorcycle industry itself is becoming more emotional again. Manufacturers are rediscovering the power of legacy, and few names carry underground credibility quite like the GS1000, especially in America. Because in the US, the old GS models earned a reputation as fearless street machines, motorcycles that felt rebellious without trying too hard. That identity still matters today. In fact, it might matter more now than ever before. Modern riders are exhausted by motorcycles that all look identical. Sharp LED lights, oversized fairings, endless screens. The retro movement happened because people wanted motorcycles to feel human again. And this is where the GS1000C could become extremely interesting. That's the formula Kawasaki already proved works with the Z900RS, and Suzuki knows it. But there's another reason this rumored comeback matters. If Suzuki enters the retro superbike segment seriously, the competition changes overnight, because Honda would suddenly face pressure to push the CB platform even further. Kawasaki would no longer dominate uncontested, and Yamaha could be forced to revive even more heritage-inspired projects. In other words, the GS1000C wouldn't just be another retro bike. It could trigger an entirely new phase in the Japanese retro war. And perhaps that's why enthusiasts are paying attention now. Not because Suzuki confirmed anything officially, but because the industry conditions finally feel right. The demand exists. The nostalgia exists. If Suzuki treats the GS1000C as just another trend, It will fail. But if they truly understand what made the original GS legendary, simplicity, confidence, mechanical emotion, then this comeback could become something much bigger than people expect. Maybe even iconic. And honestly, the motorcycle world feels more exciting when machines like this exist. Not because they're the fastest, not because they dominate spec sheets, but because they remind us why we fell in love with motorcycles in the first place. So now the question becomes, if Suzuki really brings back the GS1000C in 2027, would you choose it over Honda's CB lineup or Kawasaki's ZRS machines? Or is the GS legend better left in the past?